I sang that song for more than 60 years, a song of praise to Joseph Smith, the prophet of the Restoration and founder of the LDS Church. The church I was born into, the church I loved with all my heart and taught my children to believe in, the church I served as a bishop for 5 years. I knew the church was true. I knew Joseph Smith was a prophet. I was a faithful Latter-day Saint. My life has been built on certain truths, but wishing doesn't change the truth. I didn't start out challenging my belief in the church. Believe me, this new look at things has been gut-wrenching. I know there are those of you out there watching who are in as much turmoil as I was. But I hope that God will lead you to the truth. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free." When I finally learned the truth about the real history and doctrines of Mormonism, I realized that I was following the gospel of Joseph Smith and not the gospel of Jesus Christ. I have come to learn that many others have made a similar journey out of the bondage of religion and into an authentic relationship with Jesus. And that's what this show is all about. Courageous people who want to share their story, hoping that you, the viewer, will discover the same new life in Jesus. So if you're a Latter-day Saint who is struggling with questions or seeking a genuine encounter with the Savior, we invite you to join us tonight. We have a joyful message that we want to share with you. For the next few weeks, we're going to be meeting up close and personal someone who has been called the bravest woman in Utah. She's a pioneer in the truest sense of the word, and when you think about the Mormon-Christian debates, I think one name would always pop up and probably be at the top of the list, and that name is Sandra Tanner. And so I'm really thrilled to welcome Sandra Tanner.
Yes.
And I know you've done tons of interviews over the years. How many do you think you've done?
I have no idea.
No way to even count. She's been interviewed locally and nationally. Mm-hmm. But you know, I think, of course, all the shows that are on TV20 reach different audiences.
Yes.
And I think we have a movement, it feels like, at any rate, of new people coming out of the church that may not know you up close and personal. And so, and this will be a different kind of an interview in this, from what we usually do, in the sense that we want to kind of meet Sandra Tanner in a personal way and kind of get a little of her story, a lot of her story, and how she came to be where she's at. So why don't you give us a little bit of your background and your heritage?
Okay. Well, my heritage goes back to practically the beginning of Mormonism. Excuse me. My great-great-grandfather was Brigham Young, and he joined Mormonism in the early 1830s. And his first wife died. He remarried to a lady named Marianne Angel, and she's my great-great-grandma.
Wow.
And so Brigham Young and Marianne came west when the Mormons were expelled from Illinois.
Yeah.
And Brigham went into polygamy in Nauvoo before he ever came out to Utah. A lot of Mormons think it all happened because they came across the plains and men died. But they were living polygamy already.
In Nauvoo.
In Nauvoo. So Brigham already had married plural wives, quite a few of them, before he came west. But then they start up Salt Lake City, and Brigham Young becomes the territorial governor of Utah and adds to his family. He ends up with something like 55 wives. We aren't sure of the count. And the reason we aren't sure of the count, because they didn't always tell each other. Like a man didn't always tell his wife when he took another one. It didn't make for the best relations to say, you know, hey, hon, I just married number 43.
Did some of the journals and some of the diaries of these women, have they come forward or come down through the ages?
There is some stuff on some of these women. A number of Joseph Smith's widows married Brigham Young.
Oh, that's right.
And so in the book, In Sacred Loneliness, where Todd Compton, a Mormon scholar, gives a biography of the different women. You will see a number of Joseph Smith's wives will then go on to marry Brigham Young.
Wow.
And so anyways, they get out to Utah, and Brigham's son, Brigham Young Jr., by Mary Ann, grows up to become an apostle in the Mormon Church.
Brigham Young Jr. Okay. How many Brigham Young Juniors were there, do you think?
I think there was. Yes, I think there was. I think one of the other wives named her son Brigham Young as well. Yeah. But the one that is known in church history, you would see reference mostly, would be my great-grandpa, Brigham Young Jr. And
he was he president of the Council of 12?
Yes, he was an apostle, and at the turn of the 1900 time period, he would have been in line to be next president of the church, but he died relatively young for general authorities.
Yeah, some of them lived.
I think he was in his 60s or something. I mean, nowadays they live to 80, 90, or 100 or whatever. Anyways, Brigham Young Jr. also practiced polygamy. He had, 4 or 6 wives, something like that. And so I don't come down through the first wife in that go-around with Brigham Young Jr. I come from, I think it's his 3rd wife.
Wow.
He married her just before the manifesto, I think in 1889. But he did take plural wives after the manifesto as well.
Yeah, I heard that there were a few that did that on the on the slide. Now, were they sealed in the temple? Was that part of the process of those?
They may have been sealed in the endowment ceremony. Let's see. They would have been done. Some would have been done in the temple. Some were done down in Mexico. Some, were done in other locations. I didn't. Today, a Mormon thinks of sealings as only happening in the temple, but in early Mormon history, a number of they had the endowment house. Well, and before that, they did it just out on the riverbank or something. Joseph Smith was sealed to women in homes or out under a tree or something.
Wherever he could get them,
where he could get it to happen.
Well, now was Brigham Young's the ones that left Joseph from Joseph Smith being their husband and to Brigham Young, was that, were they sealed to them, to Brigham Young? In other words, who gets them in the hereafter, I guess?
They were sealed to Brigham Young for time and to Joseph for eternity.
Okay.
Except some of them already had husbands when they married Joseph Smith, and then they married Brigham, and they still got this other husband out there. I mean, it's a very odd
fun
mix of all of that stuff. But anyways.
They're going to be surprised anyway, aren't they?
Brigham had about 56 children.
Wow.
And one of them was Brigham Young Jr. I don't remember how many kids Brigham Jr. had, but he had a son, Walter, who was my grandpa. Okay. And so my grandma that married Walter, her last name was Pierce. And Sylvia Pierce descended, her father, James Pierce, participated in the Mountain Meadow Massacre, and his father, Harrison Pierce. Wow. So in my family line, I have Brigham Young on the one side that's held to be responsible for the massacre happening, and on the other family line, I have a great-grandpa and a great-great-grandpa that both participated in the massacre.
Wow.
But anyway, Sylvia Pierce married Walter, son of an apostle, and they had, I can't remember, I think it was 8 or 9 kids, and so I had a lot of aunts and uncles.
Yeah.
My father's side of the family were converts into Mormonism, so I'm not sure if there's any polygamy from. There might have been through my grandma's line, because her family was old line Mormon, but my grandpa was a convert in. So my folks were here in Salt Lake. When they got married in the Salt Lake Temple.
Okay.
And then that would have been in the 1930s. I don't remember what year it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't there,
No. Well, but, how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have an older sister and a younger brother.
Okay.
And my mom and dad got married in the temple. Then with the World War II looming, they went down to California for defense work. I was born here in Salt Lake in 1941, here in the Salt Lake at the LDS hospital.
Okay.
Blessed by the Lord. And but But they moved to California for my dad to work in defense work down there.
During World
War II.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, since he already had a couple of kids, I mean, he wasn't being called up to go serve.
Sure.
So he worked at Lockheed down in the San Fernando Valley.
Wow.
But
let me interrupt just a second. Yeah. You mentioned Grandma, and I've read a lot about trying to prepare for our interview for the next few weeks, and one of the cute stories that I remember reading was about Walter Young's wife. Your grandma.
Yeah, that's my grandma, yeah.
And you were told in another interview a cute story about her. And
yeah, well, my grandma was a real character. At this point of the story, Grandpa Young had died, and Grandma was a single woman, and the Tabernacle Choir was going to go on a tour of Europe, and they were going to visit the temple in Switzerland on the tour. And my grandma signed up to go on the tour with the choir, and she wanted to go see the Swiss temple. Well, she always wore garments, but she had not renewed her temple recommend for a while. So she went in to get her recommend updated, and the bishop's going along on the questions. Well, sister, I mean, she'd been in that ward forever, so everyone knew her, It wasn't like she hadn't showed up before. I mean, they knew who she was. And the bishop's just chatting with her, and he said, well, how are you doing on the word of wisdom? And she says, well, I'm no problem. Yeah, I'm keeping the word of wisdom. Well, I do have a cup of coffee in the morning, but other than that, yeah, I keep the word of wisdom. And the bishop says, oh, well, wait a minute. Well, I can't give you a recommend if you're having coffee every morning. And my grandma said, Bishop, everyone on my block has coffee in the morning. And the bishop's response to her was, yes, but they didn't tell me.
So he was over a barrel.
I don't remember if she got to get her temple recommend or not. I just remember telling that story.
And go through the Swiss temple.
Yeah.
Well, that was a funny story, I thought. Now, so your mom and dad married in the temple, and what does your family? I mean, they're active in the church, and the kids are.
Well, when we moved to California, this was the first time that my parents had lived outside of Mormonville.
Okay.
And
away from the family.
Away from the family, away from the church. You're down in an area where no one cares if you're Mormon.
Yeah. Okay.
And your next door neighbors aren't going to be Mormon.
So they're not judging you that way.
Yeah, so it was kind of like a freedom. So I don't know just when along the line, maybe when I was sometime along the way in grammar school, my mother quit wearing her garments. Now,
that's a big step, really, isn't
it? And her justification for this was that she wore a hearing aid. And back in the 40s, to wear a hearing aid, she had a big battery pack that strapped on her leg, had a cord that came up to a headset that went behind her ears with little transmitter things behind her ears.
Yeah.
And so she had this get-up thing she had to put on. And, of course, back in the 40s, the garment was a one-piece.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Rather
thing.
Than two-piece.
Yeah, well, now it's two-piece, but it was one piece.
Oh, boy.
And,
so very awkward to wear.
Yeah, she told my dad, she says, I can't deal with this hearing aid and garments, too. It's just too awkward to put this on and have my garments on, too, and cords and all this stuff. And so that was her pretext. I suspect that she had other issues besides. I don't think she was ever happy with the garments. I think she always carried a certain resentment with my father because he made her keep them on their wedding night.
One of those.
Really devout, yes.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
And she said, I felt so ugly on my wedding night that she just, I don't know if she ever got over it. But she quit wearing her garments. Well, my dad then quit wearing his, because if she's not wearing hers, it doesn't do him any good. And they're living in California and beach weather anyway. So.
Yeah, oh, that's true.
So, I remember them being in the drawer, and then at some point they quit being in the drawer anymore.
Just were gone. Huh?
Just were gone.
Well, now, you'd mentioned somewhere along the way, too, that she had a little bit of a thought that the temple ceremony was a little strange, because back in those days they did blood oaths kind of thing, and that kind of bothered her, it sounded like. And
right. There were a number of things that had bothered her. As a teenager, she used to clean house for the bishop here in Salt Lake. And when his daughter got married in the temple, my mom observed in the summer that the daughter was either cutting off the garments or rolling up the sleeves, but she was wearing sleeveless blouses, you know. In some way she was modifying the garment to and my mom thought this was really sacrilegious or whatever, you know, that wow, the bishop allows her to do that. And then she gets married, and here my dad's this fanatic that you got to keep the garments on your wedding night.
On a wedding night, oh boy.
And the bishop's daughter gets to modify her garments for her fashion. So
little things that kind
little
of
things. She
her.
was bothered by the ritual itself. It just was so bizarre. Some of it to her was funny. I mean, when she said, because the women sit on one side, the men sit on the other.
Right.
And she said she looked over at my dad, and he's got his hat on backwards and crooked to everybody else. And she just felt like bursting out laughing. She said it was so ridiculous.
There is a little bit of humor that goes on in there, I must say.
Yeah, but she, so I think she always was bothered by some elements of the ceremony.
Yeah.
But then Fawn Brodie's book came out in the mid 1940s. Her biography of Joseph Smith. No Man Knows My History. I'm not sure when my mother saw that. It may have been in the 50s. I don't know that she saw it in the 40s. Yeah. I'm not sure just at what point. But she read it. My grandma read it. Wow. The one that was drinking coffee in the morning. And one of my aunts, older sister of my mother's, read it, and that put them on a search, and well, I guess ultimately was partly responsible for my journey, because I was aware that they were
having trouble
looking at these things. And I know as a young person, when we'd drive over to the Ward House in California, the route we took us past the reorganized LDS church.
Oh.
So I was aware that there was a splinter group.
Okay.
Because my mother pointed out the church, and a little bit was said, not big discussion, but a little bit was said about, you know, that's
what
a break-off group of Mormonism, and they think the Utah group's wrong, and so I don't know what all her experience had been with them.
Wow.
But as a grammar school kid, I was aware there was a reorganized LDS church.
Wow.
So it wasn't as big a surprise as it is to some when they find out they're different breakoff groups of Mormons
that believe in Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon and everything. And so this impacted her, and I guess Fawn Brodie's book was really one of the first that would be, I mean, we'd call it, I guess the church would call it anti-Mormon, but it's just factual. It just tells the story.
Right. There hadn't been a good biography of Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
And the church material was also edited and polished.
Never heard of that before.
That Brodie's book was a breath of fresh air for people, because here was a candid look at the man. And the Mormons respond to her book as though it's, you know, just evil. But it really is a pretty decent biography.
And it stood up very well.
Stood the test of time, yes. Yeah. So she read that, and so behind the scenes, as far as I was concerned, she was doing research that I wasn't even aware of.
Oh.
Now, I was baptized at 8 down in the San Fernando Valley.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember which ward it was.
Primary and all that stuff?
I didn't get the primary real regularly. I got there some. My folks had started up their own business at that point, and I don't think it always fit in their calendar, so I wasn't a regular at primary. We usually made it to church, although as I got into maybe the 5th grade, they weren't as committed to going every Sunday.
Mm.
Well, I was this good little Mormon, and I'd say, but Daddy, aren't we going to church today? And they're planning on going to the beach, you know, and well, honey, next Sunday we'll go to church. This Sunday we're going to the beach, you know. So this was an ongoing thing through my teen years with my family.
You were the one that wanted to go.
I was the guilt trip for everyone. We should be in church.
Oh, my goodness.
When your
That's
little kid says that
it?
to you, you know, you're like, oh.
Wow. So they were kind of hit and miss on the church.
At that point, they were hit and miss. But I went whenever I could get them to take me.
Yeah. Now, you had an experience in about the 8th grade that you've shared with others. And remember this?
Yeah. In 8th grade, it was in gym class, and this Christian girl came up to me, and she said, Sandra, I understand you're a Mormon. And I said, well, yeah. And she says, well, what do the Mormons believe about God? And I'm trying to think, okay, how do you answer that one? So, and then I remembered, I was taught this little phrase by Lorenzo Snow, as man is, God once was, as God is, man may become.
And so if you told her that.
And so I said that to her, and she just looked at me horrified, and she says, Sandra, that's blasphemy, and walked away. And there I'm standing, you know, what was wrong with that? And I ran it back through my mind, as man is, God once was, as God is, man can become. Oh, sounds fine to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Didn't that struck you that is that really the first time you'd probably...
It's the first time I'd ever had my faith challenged by anyone, where anyone said anything negative about it.
Wow.
I mean, other people didn't know about it, you know, but, I mean, I had a little Jewish girl through grammar school, and we hung around together because we were the two oddballs. Everyone else was Protestant.
Oh,
and
the Jewish and the Mormon girl.
Jewish and the Mormon girl, we hung out together. Well, there finally in 6th grade, there came a Catholic girl to the school. But Alice Ripley, she was pretty, and we decided we didn't like her.
No, you didn't. Because she was cute.
Because she was cute. So, so Ellen and me hung out together, but there was no tension, religious-wise, on our belief systems. You know, so in the 8th grade, it's the first time anyone said anything negative about Mormonism to me.
Wow.
So it was really a surprise, you know, blasphemy. Well, that's kind of strong.
Everybody should believe the same thing or
something. Well, it made sense to me. I couldn't understand why she had a problem.
Well, I've got a couple of little personal kind of questions to ask you about your time growing up. You were in California at this point. Do you recall any favorite movies or any favorite books that you read? Anything that when you were growing up?
Well, Saturday matinees were the thing to do, and Tarzan
all the kids used to go to the
Tom
early morning
and all that kind of stuff. No, people today won't even know what that's about.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably.
But we got TV. I don't know, when I was in 5th grade or something. Well, TV set, you know.
A little black and white.
Yeah, so and we had a problem because my folks had their own business, so they'd get home some nights not get home till 9. And back then, when you turned your TV off, it didn't go right off.
Oh, I know, yeah.
It had this light that would go down. It would get to this little pinpoint of light, and that took a minute to go away.
Yeah, I'll sit and watch that.
So we're watching TV. We hear the folks drive in. We jump up, and you had to go turn the TV off back in those days. We jump up and run over and turn the TV off, jump in bed, act like we're asleep, but the dot doesn't go away.
So they knew you were up.
Oh, yeah, and then my dad figured out all he had to do is put his hand on the TV, and it was warm. Okay, you guys.
The old tubes that were in the old TVs.
Old tubes, yeah.
You remember any games that you played as a child, things that you enjoyed doing?
Oh, Parcheesi and Monopoly.
Oh, did you?
Stuff like that.
I used to like Monopoly.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and then my sister, what would she have been? 6th, 7th grade. She discovered Ouija boards. And I don't know why my folks let her get a Ouija board, but anyways.
Yeah, we stayed away from that.
She had a Ouija board. She was fascinated with magic. She got my dad to take her to a couple of different magic shows.
Oh my goodness.
And she got into hypnosis.
Wow.
Just in junior high, and she was trying to hypnotize me and my little girlfriend.
Was she successful, or?
Well, yeah, actually, with my little girlfriend, she hypnotized her and told her she was strong enough. I don't know if she told her she was Superwoman or what, but that she was strong enough to pick up the foot of my folks' bed. And she did. She went over and picked up the foot of the bed.
Shocked you?
Yeah. Wow. You know, so I don't know if it's the power of suggestion, really hypnosis. I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, I was very impressed. So yeah, life with my sister was kind of different. She was a little eccentric and different in different ways like that.
Did she end up being a New Ager kind of person? Or
yeah.
Did she later?
Yeah. She married a Mormon boy, but then later they got a divorce, and then she kind of went into New Age stuff for years and years and years. So she did finally become a Christian, but she spent many years out in California's smorgasbord of believe anything you want and
there was
take
a lot
your
of
pick.
That in the 50s and 60s and stuff, yeah. Well, a couple of last ones. Favorite food as a child? Do you remember anything particularly?
Ice cream.
Especially in California. Maybe.
California, yeah.
You went to high school?
Missionaries knocked on our door when we were married but didn't have any children.
We were always incredibly strong and faithful in the LDS Church.
Joseph Smith was a prophet, and the LDS Church was the only true church on earth.
You didn't even think that there was any world outside Mormonism.
And we just kind of dug in and never gave it a second thought.
You know, just following the religion, the Mormon religion was all I needed.
I believed it with all my heart.
We had a real heart for the church. We believed in the church.
The LDS Church was the only way.
Even though I was living the commandments outwardly, I still felt like something was missing.
There's the things that you kind of put up on the shelf.
I wanted so bad to not know that.
And you begin to feel the weight of that shelf. It eventually breaks.
What if what you've believed all your life isn't the real Christ? It does have eternal consequences.
God began to change my life in amazing ways about 6 months into my 2-year mission experience.